What's up, everybody? It's your boy Tommaso
and Alessandro,
and we're back with another sample breakdown. Today we're showing you one of our samples from our VHS Heroes Volume 8 sample pack. It's a sample pack series that we really like, as you can tell, because we already made 8 of them. It's inspired by 80s and late 90s action movies. This particular one, however, has more of a romantic and nostalgic vibe going on. Usually the main character in the movie has some sort of romance or some sort of woman that he loves and that he's trying to get throughout the movie. You know, in the meantime, he's killing people and fighting people, but he's also in love with somebody. and that's the type of music that will play in those romantic, nostalgic scenes where he's thinking about the woman that he loves and, you know, that type of stuff. So let's get into the individual stems to show you how we put it together.
Let's go.
So a little backstory to this joint. We started this particular sample when we were visiting family in our hometown. Former Dope Boys Music member Erkan, shout out to Erkan, has a music school / studio room that he's so generous to let us use that whenever we're there.
Yeah.
So we went there, started working on some music, and I basically played this first chord that you're about to hear and said to my brother, that sounds kind of cool. He agreed, and within 5 minutes put together the rest of the chord progression, and that's how this particular one started.
What makes this chord structure interesting is that no chord is like a basic triad chord. Every chord has some sort of inversion or sus2 or sus4 nugget in there. And that's how it loops. The VST we used is the Emulator 2 from Arturia Analog Lab, preset called Alpha Piano. This was another case of being really lucky with the presets, I guess. Sometimes you just stumble upon the perfect preset. As you can see, there's nothing going on in terms of effects, just some EQing.
Stumbled upon the perfect first chord too, kind of.
Yeah.
So sometimes it just happens like that.
Exactly. Then we have Piano VST.
I think it's Alicious Keys.
It's Alicious Keys, yeah. It's just rendered in this case, and it follows the chords of the main patch, but instead of playing arpeggios, it just like plays the chords on the downbeat. Yeah. And leaves this one out as well. And then we also got this little fill right here, together with the keys. You know, just an octave higher to like accentuate the arpeggio a bit. This is UAD Electra 88 keys patch. It's called Down the Rabbit Hole. We don't have a lot of processing on there. There's an imager. I don't even know. It doesn't even do anything.
It does.
I think
the bass part is in mono this way.
Yeah, but I think I used this in order to check where this goes, because there's a vectroscope. It's like an analyzer that tells you where the sound is in the stereo. And I also see that I have panned this one 40% to the left. So I guess I panned it to the left and then used this in order to see where it comes out. And then I just forgot to delete it. So these are the main keys. And now we are going to talk about the bass.
Yeah, so this is the bass line that we played. Little dead note here. So in this particular case, the bass line kind of has like more of a supporting role. There's not really a riff going on or anything. Again, it's a Trillion patch. You know, by now you probably realized that we really like Trillion for basses. If it's not Trillion, it's either a real bass, and sometimes I use the synth to play some layers, but 9 times out of 10, it's Trillion or a real recording of a bass. And this particular patch is called Muted Trilogy Classic. This is like a very often used patch, we use this one a lot. And then as far as effects goes, there's a CLA bass. Preset is called Clean Shake, and then we adjusted it. As you can see, there's different parameters here like bass, treble, compress, the sub. Let's play it with and without so we can hear what CLA bass is actually doing. Now with it,
comes a bit more to the front.
Exactly.
Which makes sense because the compression fader is turned up all the way.
Exactly. So you can definitely hear the compression and how it just jumps out at you a little more. But there's a compressor here, and we're gonna show you the beat that we made with this particular joint later on. So this compressor is really just a side chain compressor that's working together with the kick and the snare as well. And then there's some Pro Q. Especially when you start out, small edits like this, they seem to feel random. What of a difference does it make to cut down here at minus 0.5 dB? It does make a difference. The longer you do this, the more experience you get, the better your ears get. And you will start to hear those little differences. And at this point, we felt like the bass is maybe just a tad too much in this particular joint, so we turned it down a little bit. And that's it as far as the bass line goes. There is a second bass patch, but this is really just to emphasize certain things. And you can see it's at minus 17 dB. It's really more like a background thing, just to fatten up certain parts where the real bass is not playing. That sounds like that. There's also a trillion patch called Bulbous Bass, I guess. So like we said earlier, we started this particular joint in Germany and only got it up to a certain level. Then we brought it back home and my brother basically finished the composition and then he sent it over. And then I ended up adding a few things with the synth. I feel like especially with the 80s and retro stuff, if you add real synthesizer sounds, it just enhances the whole thing. And if you tweak them to really sound like 80s retro stuff, it just adds a certain vibe and a certain texture. I wouldn't say better than the plugins, but it's definitely different. They all have their advantages or disadvantages. And I feel like when it comes to the retro stuff, the real synth has characteristics that I really like and that I feel like enhance the composition. As you can see here, the track with the blue in the background, that's synth fillers basically that I played. It's a very basic patch. It's just one oscillator. I just played the parts, threw on a delay and a reverb. That's all I did really, and it sounds like this.
Nice.
And then here is like a glissando. What I usually do when the track is in the minor key, I tune the synth so that it is in D sharp, so I can just do this on the black keys.
Yeah.
And it's easy and it sounds nice and I don't have to mess up the keyboard or my fingers. And then there's just one little pluck here before it goes into the chorus. And then there's a hook melody that's coming in later that we layered with this particular patch as well, and that goes like this. So another one of the main elements is the muted guitar. And again, we talked about this last week where I said how much of an advantage it can be if you have a library of live recordings played by musicians who actually play the real instruments, that you can sometimes repurpose, use them in a different composition, in a different context, and will still sound fresh and new and not like you're doing the same stuff over and over again. This muted guitar take, which stems from our VHS Heroes Volume 1, actually, from a composition named Atmosphere. This is probably my most recycled or repurposed loop, played by a guitarist named Giacomo Pasquali. As you might be able to tell from the name, he's from Italy, and he's the one who played this particular take, so let me solo that and play it for you. The way it ends with this little fill, it just sounds amazing, and it adds that little bit of extra sauce. I might be able to play the basic part, but I can't play that fill that way. And that's why I always come back to this particular take and repurpose it and reuse it.
This is also part of, I guess, the circumstances we built this composition in, because like my brother said earlier, we haven't been in our studio. So for this composition, we actually used quite a bit of chops and slices of sounds from other compositions, because we just didn't have access to like a guitar, you know, certain sounds or certain like workflows that you're just used to. For example, we also have this wah-wah pedal right here, which is from a different sample. Then we have these guitar chords. I basically took them from our Billboard Bangers pack and I transposed them. I went into the specific slices where the chord in the guitar fits the chord structure, and then I chopped it in there so that it like plays the right chord at the right moment. And lastly, we also have sample from our 6-side pack. We have a guitar fill. We have like 4 guitar stems in here, which are basically chops that we used from samples. Like I said earlier, we didn't have access to like instruments that we have in here. So we had to get creative with chopping up stuff. Maybe let's just play everything together. the other stuff we got so far.
Let's get into the hook layers, which are quite a few.
One of the things when you listen to a record often is when the chorus comes, it sounds a bit more like wider and bigger. It's not just one instrument, it's like multiple tiny layers played together. So we have this bass synth right here that we talked about earlier. Just a very subtle sound. And then we have basically this entire block of sounds here. And what we have here is a melody, a pad, and the rest is just chords more or less. First of all, we have this low guitar, which plays the bass notes. It's a power chords, I think it actually plays. Yeah. And we also have these guitar chords, which are actually played on a keyboard. And we use the Evolution Jazz Archtop Pontac library. I use this library quite a lot for guitar chords and background chords. Basically just follows the chord structure. And when I use a guitar to play chords, I make sure that I spread the chord out. So for example, the first chord of the main sound, it has this in there. But because these two notes, they are so close to each other, on a guitar, it would be hard to like play like a minor second or like a major second. So I try to like invert the chords in a way where there's space between each note, because that's how it would sound on an actual guitar. And what I came up with are these inversions right here. We also have the synth brass. And these have like a stabby quality to them. This is the Tal Uno LX. The patch is called BRS Brass 1 FMR.
Probably our favorite Juno replica.
This one, we use it a lot in the VHS Heroes series. Here we have quite some editing. This Eventide harmonizer. The preset is called Chorus Drift. This is like a very basic chorus, but it sounds very nice out of this particular plugin right here. Once again, Valhalla Vintage Verb. Often I use Valhalla Vintage Verb in order to give stabby sounds a tail. I don't want them to just cut off. Here we have an imager, the Isotope imager. It is a multiband imager, so you can choose which parts in the frequency band you want to enhance. Okay, I chose 2 EQ bands, and everything above 761 Hertz is basically getting enhanced. Dirty Filter, once again a free plugin, just to roll off some of the highs. At 50.2 Hertz is very subtle. It just rolls off that like high shine that often sounds a bit plasticky. Roll that off in order to give it more of a vintage vibe. Lastly, this pad and plug. The plug plays a little melody. And this is the Tal Fa X. This is supposed to be a remake of the Alpha Juno 2. This is a preset called Zenithone MK1. We have some chorus on there, also a Juno chorus.
Also one of our go-tos when it comes to the retro stuff.
Yes, and it's a preset deep chorus, and the mix fader is adjusted a bit. And once again, Dirty Filter to roll off some high end. And then we have this pad, which is also the Tal Uno LX preset pad, big synth pad 1 FMR. For the first half, it just plays this like note to follow the chords. And later on, it sort of joins this plug. As you can see here, from here on out, they play the same notes. After the plug plays this fill, they kind of join together. There's also this wah-wah guitar up here. Again, I try to avoid playing like minor seconds or major seconds, just spread the notes out a bit. This is from a Pontac library called Grindhouse. This Superfly Mod Wheel wah guitar, it's one of the coolest wah-wah guitar keyboard patches in my opinion.
And we definitely showed this one before too.
Yeah, you use the mod wheel in order to control the wah. And it just sounds very nice.
So these are all the elements as far as the sample goes. As you know by now, we always like to test drive those samples and add some drums and see you know, what that track would sound like with drums added, turned into a beat, which is what we did again. So let me show you what that sounds like. A little effect there for the beat. So that's it for today. We hope you guys enjoyed this one and learned some stuff along the way. As always, if you're into those type of samples, make sure you check out VHS Volume 8 and all the other VHS. I assure you they're all fire, not just Volume 8. And they're available on dopeboykids.com. If you like this particular beat, it's called There For You, just like the sample, and is now available on dopeboysmusic.com. As always, we appreciate you watching and leaving likes and comments. We see all of those and we try to reply to all of them. So keep that coming, as we will continue to keep those sample breakdowns coming. Thanks for watching. Peace.
Peace.